here to talk about promoting GIS in your organization. Everyone can see my screen? Hearing none? Okay, great. So I am a GIS coordinator for a company called SLR. We were formerly Malone & McBroom, and we were acquired by SLR in 2020, right as the pandemic started. So right before we were purchased by SLR, I had been part of this group in MMI, where we were trying to figure out some ways to improve communication between departments, to break down technology and knowledge silos, and to just kind of increase knowledge of our internal skill sets. And one of the things I had promoted, I had suggested, I said, hey, why don't we do a GIS day? And I can, run a little GIS day activity within our company. And the group I was with, like, yeah, no, that sounds great. And then upper management heard about it, and they were like, oh yeah, what about, what if we did it like innovation and technology, like more than GIS? And we're like, yeah, that sounds great. And then they kept talking about it, like, what if it was a whole week instead of a day? I was like, okay, all right, well, let's stop before we get any more ideas. And in 2019, we held Innovation and Technology Week at MMI. And then we were purchased by SLR, and, we had the whole pandemic, and SLR is a much bigger company than MMI. MMI, we had 8 offices. We were all centered in New England, and it being, we were about 150 people at MMI. So pretty much everybody knew each other in one way or another. Now SLR is a much bigger organization. We have about 500 to 600 staffers in the US, 40 offices, and this SLR has grown a lot by acquiring small companies throughout the years. So there was a lot of people who don't know each other. So upper management came back to me and they said, hey, could you do Innovation Technology Week again? And I said, sure. And what I found out, that Innovation Technology Week, or at its source, what its core was supposed to be, a GIS Day event, was a really good way to promote the use of GIS in our organization. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to talk a little bit about how Innovation and Technology Week took off, what the impacts have been, and then I have a couple other ideas I'm going to share at the end about how to promote GIS within your organization. Now, one thing I do understand is for the municipal folks, it could seem hard to pick up and run with an event, and maybe even in some private places as well. But I found if I ever want to accomplish anything, no matter what organization I'm in, it's usually you just kind of have to plant a seed and start building it. And things that develop from the bottom up have a good chance of taking off as long as you're willing to put in the work to promote yourself and to promote your idea. I was lucky in where I worked that I had a ton of support as soon as the idea blossomed in my mind. But I think, done right, anybody could take this idea and adapt it to your own environment. So one of the first things that you want to understand is your organization. If you're going to promote GIS in your organization, you have to understand your struggles and as well as your accomplishments. So in our organization, in any organization, really, some of your struggles are communication, having people understand what GIS is and what it can do. You can often struggle with awareness that, you have these tools and you have these skills and these abilities that you can share, but people may not even know, who you are or what you can do. Training is often a struggle in getting people to pick up the software and learn bits and pieces of it for their needs. And that usually requires you performing some sort of training. And then funding. Funding is always a struggle in any organization, and it's usually tied to a lack of awareness and a lack of communication. That's oftentimes can be a problem. But as GIS folks, we all have accomplishments that are just inherent in the nature of the work that we do. We are always finding innovations in our software, and we're always solving problems. We are often able to grow the awareness of GIS or the use of GIS in our organization by the nature of solving those problems. And then you know, I personally feel that whatever nickel you put into GIS, you always get more out of it, because you're taking this, you know, this flat piece of software and you're doing something with it. You're making somebody's work easier or better, or you're solving a problem. It's just the nature of the way that we work. So when you're starting to plan and you're starting to think about promoting GIS in your organization, you have to think about turning your struggles into goals, and you use your accomplishments as your framework for future success. So every struggle that we have is simply a goal that needs to be overcome. And every accomplishment that you've been able to achieve gives you a framework for future success. So you have to kind of keep those things in mind when you're planning on reaching out to your greater organization at large and selling yourself and your skills and selling this technology to your coworkers. So I want to go into a little bit about how Innovation Week worked at SLR. It was this past April from the 11th to the 15th. We had a week's worth of events. Our original week back in 2019, we had events Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. This year we did it we had something every day. So the purpose of Innovation Week was to promote innovation in technology. And while a lot of it was focused on spatial technology and spatial solutions, which all link back to GIS, we kind of made it more about innovation in technology as a whole. And that's a communication tool, because if I had done GIS Day, I maybe would have gotten 50 or 80 people involved. By promoting innovation and technology, we had attendees to our events in the 200 and 300 numbers. And this was all virtual. That's the other thing. This entire week worth of event was virtual, whereas original in 2019 was in person. So one of the things we did with Innovation Technology Week, one of the goals was to spotlight staff. We have tons of talented people. And one of the key things that you want to do is you want to find those talents. You want to find those people that are doing interesting or good things and give them a chance to talk about what they're doing, so that you can spread the awareness of their abilities throughout your organization. That in turn open lines of communication, because when you discover like, oh, hey, Bob down the hall is super good at Excel, and you know, Alicia down in the business office does really good job with graphic design, you can start pooling those talents together, and you can bring those skills and meld them in your GIS work and provide GIS tools for those kinds of people. And you start to build this competency and this reliance on GIS, which only strengthens your own position and your own goals and your own objectives. So the first thing that we did is we had a poster contest, and this is straight up, I took this idea right out of GIS Day, and I sent out, I had made a board on how to design a poster effectively. And I sent a notice out to staff, and I said, hey, we're going to have a poster contest, and we're going to have different categories. And we're going to have we had an Innovation Technology Week planning committee. So I said, we're going to put up your posters. We're going to have 6 categories. You're going to win. Whoever wins will get $50. And so we had a panel of judges vote for 5, and then we had our vote for these 6 categories, and then we had a People's Choice Award. So that was the 7th one. So I want to just kind of highlight a couple posters that we had here, and let me see if I can bring this up on screen. Can you see the graphic design software showcase? Or am I still in PowerPoint?
Yes, we see it.
Okay. All right, great. So this woman who made this poster, she is one of our landscape architects, but she's really great with Photoshop and Illustrator. And she often works with CAD data. And what she'll do is she'll take a GIS background and some CAD drawings, and she'll mash them up together. And she turns our renderings into these beautiful visual designscapes. And so she took Innovation Week as an opportunity to promote herself as not just a landscape architect and not just a CAD aficionado, but she says, hey, I have these design skills and I can help you take your products and make them better. So that was a really great one. And then we had one for best poster design. This came out of our our Vermont office. This poster won an award for a water resources category at the 2022 Engineering Excellence Award. And our group just really liked the way that this poster spelled everything out. We've got a little CAD drawing over here. And this was an opportunity for these folks to share their project, share their skills, and it was just a great poster. Our People's Choice Award, we bought the Trimble SX10 3D scanning total station. And this poster was showing about how this piece of technology is used to capture a 3D scan out in the field and how they bring it back into the computer. So these are a couple posters that were just really, really great. This one over here, if you can see this really super weird one, somebody used AI to create a poster design, which I thought was pretty cool. We had one on ArcGIS story maps. And then we had a tie on posters that had the best explanation of how they approached a project. It was a really innovative way of laying out and explaining their project. So the poster contest was really fun. Where did I shot ahead a whole bunch here. Poster. Oh, okay. So other ideas that we have let me actually, this slide's too early. Move it down to the end. All right. Poster contest. So this was the People's Choice Award poster,
Meg,
which you can see. Can you see it here? The People's Choice Award.
Yep.
All right, great. So this one was really great, and I'm going to speak a little bit more about this in Carly's poster at the end and the impacts that the poster contest had. Then we had lightning talks, another idea I ripped right out of GIS Day. We had 2 rounds of lightning talks where we had different members of different departments take 5 minutes and explain some kind of innovative approach or technology. So we have a new ESG division. We had a talk on story maps. We had a talk on these folks right here, Nick Cavadas and John Hammer. They use Lumion, which is a way to show lighting in a rendering. It was amazing. We had a talk on the Trimble. We had talks on, we have a group in our company who are trying to develop a drone program. We had another 2 folks. We have this guy, Brian Kay, who makes amazing videos. So he'll take, we did a project for I-84 for the DOT, and he took a drone video and he made this great promotion video and we placed it in our GIS story map. I talked about AutoCAD and ArcGIS integration. Carly talked about her abilities to use graphic design software, and then we had a talk on how we use GIS to create a climate change vulnerability index for Yukon. So these folks were here to talk about their skills, their passions, the technologies that they use, and how they can use those technologies to be available for other projects that we're working on. Then we had a vendor fair. We had a virtual vendor fair. We had Esri come in, Nearmap, Pix4D, and Waypoint Technology Group. And these vendors were all given their own Teams meeting. I tried to do, I was going to do like breakout rooms within a Teams channel, but it just didn't work. So the way that we got a vendor fair to work is I created one Teams meeting that started off the vendor fair, and I gave each vendor their own Teams meeting, and we sent out invitations, and that allowed, all of our staff members to hop in and out of each virtual booth as they wanted to. And this was a great way to do it because I didn't have to moderate or move people around. People could just hop in and out of Teams meetings as they wanted to, and that worked out really well. We have a group in Canada in our Canadian offices where they have a research and innovation program where they get special tax breaks to pursue new technologies that, kind of furthering the cause of science. So they were our keynote speakers and talked about their research and innovation program. And that was on Thursday. And then Friday, we had a wrap up where we announced our poster winners. We reviewed the whole week, and it was really a great time. So this whole week, every day we had a little something going on. And while not every piece of technology focused on GIS, the impacts afterwards were pretty amazing. What happened was, so the woman who did her talk on design, she had a lightning talk on design services, and she had her poster on design. She and I and another woman are now developing a digital services competency group, where within the company, we're taking all of these technologies that we learned about during Innovation Week, the drone program, the design support that our CAD users have, all the ArcGIS tools that we have, her design skills, and we're creating a space within our organization where we're going to become a resource for our 550 coworkers, where if you need a skill or a talent or a technology for your project, we're gonna have this one-stop place where, now that we've learned about all these competencies that we have in our company, we can help promote each other. So that's been really good. And then we had people from our main office in the UK, where we're owned by a company in the United Kingdom. Our upper management and our IT leads from our UK main office were listening in on our Innovation Technology Week. One of the things they saw was the work that we can do with our total scanning station, and how we can integrate, GIS and CAD and survey and develop these really great products. That has now led our IT team in the UK to kind of reimagine some of their goals for our UK side. They had done some total scanning. They had bought the scanning station, but their outputs are not as aesthetically, visually striking as what we're able to do in the US by integrating all of these technologies together. So Innovation Week has now shifted some of our upper management goals, which I think is just fantastic. Our drone team is now going to become more of a reality because they were able to promote themselves and talk about what they do. So this has been a really great advantage for us at SLR. We had, it was a bit of a risk. I have to tell you, I felt a lot of pressure in pulling off a whole bunch of successful events within a week in a virtual environment, but I had a really good team support. I had a lot of encouragement. People were interested and excited, and as the word spread about what was going on, department managers were encouraging their staff to participate and saying, hey, make a poster, do a lightning talk, make sure you would go check out the vendor fair. And it was a really great opportunity for us all, hundreds of us, to start learning more about who we work with, what our competencies are, what our capabilities are. So that was a really big effort in promoting GIS in our organization. I have a few other things I want to just talk about really quick that are less intensive than planning a whole week's worth of events. But I would encourage you, if you want to kick off an event within your organization and host something and run something, feel free to give me a call and I can share any of my lessons learned or any of my ideas. I'm happy to chat or talk anytime. So another much less intensive way to promote GIS in our organization is we have, and part of my dog, we have a huge pool of AutoCAD users. And I'm sure a lot of you municipal folks have the same within your organizations. So there is a plugin that I've been promoting at work called the ArcGIS for AutoCAD plugin. And what this is a free tool that our AutoCAD users install, and it loads up automatically. It puts a tab in their ArcGIS toolbar. And what this does is this allows our users to add content from ArcGIS Online or any open server, any REST endpoint, and bring it in to their AutoCAD drawing environment. I know oftentimes AutoCAD folks tend to be a little distrustful and a little wary of GIS data, but yet they are always asking for me to convert it for them. So we have found that being able to use the ArcGIS for AutoCAD toolbar cuts down on requests for me to create data. Hold on, my dog, 1 second. Sorry, my dog is afraid of my cat and got pinned in the hallway. So pardon that. And I did not mute when I yelled at my dog. But let me just show you really quick this ArcGIS for AutoCAD toolbar. So I have an AutoCAD drawing here. I don't know AutoCAD like at all, but if you're in model space and you have your ArcGIS for AutoCAD toolbar and you go to contents, you go to this add data button, you can add data from a URL. You can add it from ArcGIS Online. So I'm logged in and signed in, and I'm going to see, it might take a little bit to load because I'm remote on my server. But you can just type in, you know, Connecticut. You can have all items from ArcGIS Online, items from your organization, from your groups show up, your favorites. So I have the CT Eco spring air photo. So you just add it to your map, and it's probably not going to work because I'm streaming right now, but it will load. And what you can do is you can set your project area from your view like this, and eventually, and I'm probably not going to be able to show it from here, but it will load the ArcGIS for AutoCAD. The toolbar will add the Esri data in, but it's gonna be slow, I can tell. But either way, so this has been a great way to get AutoCAD users to start getting interested and more comfortable using GIS data. So that's another way to kind of, you know, maybe your engineering staff is a little crusty or crunchy about using, you know, GIS data, but they need an air photo in the back of their drawing, or they need, you know, they need to look at some data that you have in GIS. So what you can do is you can either, if you have a portal service, if you have ArcGIS Enterprise, you can add data to your portal, which can be brought into CAD, or you can share something to your ArcGIS Online organization, and they can find it easily and quickly and bring that into their AutoCAD. So this has been a really nice way for the AutoCAD users and the GIS users to integrate better and kind of build those shared knowledges. And I don't think, yeah, it's going to take forever to load because I'm streaming and viewing, and I'm across the network, and I'm whatever. So to wrap up, there are some other ideas that we have for promoting GIS within our organization. We do regular training sessions to help. We have a 2-hour ArcGIS Pro intro class that we do. We are starting GIS Summer School, which is going to be a half an hour quick lunch break lesson on, we have a set schedule of topics that we're going to cover, and it allows our more casual users to build up their skills. Like I had said earlier, we have this digital services team that we're developing where people can come and say, hey, I need a map, I need a drawing, I need a chart, I need a drone flight, I need a video made. And this, out of Innovation Week, we're building this group to identify those people with those skills and point them to the people who need them. If you have an internal website on for your organization, on your intranet, we have a GIS page that's, you know, has skills and resources, access for templates and things like that. And then other things that we've done is we've done internal surveys and needs assessments to kind of figure out what does staff need from GIS. You know, do they need people who make maps, people who can find data, people who can run a project, whatever it is. So we've kind of identified what our needs are. And it helps if you understand, you know, to bring it back to the beginning, the better you understand your organization, the easier it is to identify solutions and products and initiatives that will help further the cause of GIS where you're at. So that is, oh yeah, and the AutoCAD toolbar is free. Yep, that is free for your ArcGIS, for your CAD users. I'm looking at any other questions. Anybody that wraps up my presentation. If anybody else has questions or anything, I'm happy to answer them or take messages or anything offline as well.
All right. Thank you, Megan. All right. Here's some applause. Can't hear it, so I'll do a little bit. For those watching, you can ask questions in the chat if you want. That has the least chance of being seen, though. We have a Q&A portion, and if you're feeling brave, you can raise your hand. I'll find you, and we can let you talk. You can ask Megan your question directly, like we're in person.
Yeah, and you know what I'll do really quick, and I'll put my my email address in the chat. If anyone ever has any questions, you can reach me at mmcgaffin@slrconsulting.com.
Very good. Thanks, Megan.
Yep.
All right. So just a reminder, you can raise your hand, post in the Q&A, post in the chat, and Jenny will definitely be reaching out to you, Megan.
Thanks.
I had a question for you, Megan. I'm just, I'm looking at this event and thinking about our own GIS day at the network. So I guess my first question is, how long was each session per day? Were you doing full day or?
No. I couldn't take everybody's time. So I kept everything to an hour a day. The poster contest we had a kickoff meeting. And we have once a month, we have like a Monday company meeting. And so before Innovation Week, I was given time, I think 5 minutes to promote Innovation Week at that big company-wide meeting, so people knew what was coming. So the poster kickoff, I think that was probably like a 15-minute call to staff, and then we cross time zones from New England to Alaska.
Right. Wow.
So we like the lightning talks. We had 2 sessions to make sure that it was accessible for all staff. So that was an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon. But the vendor fair and the keynote speakers, those were later in the day, 1 hour in the afternoon, so that people who like worked in Alaska could come to it. And then same thing with the wrap up at the end of the week where we announced the poster winners. That was a half an hour. So it wasn't meant to be onerous for staff, but to have a lot of options to come in and join something. And I have to say, planning it all was it was more difficult than planning my wedding. It was more intensive. I had a simple wedding, but like this was definitely a bigger push than I would say a wedding. Getting everybody involved, getting everybody's meetings scheduled, getting the vendors lined up. It was a fair amount of work, but people were hyped for it. They really had a good time, and I had a lot of good feedback from it. And I think it's helping the organization as a whole. So I thought that was really great.
All right. Having helped coordinate a wedding before, I know it's a lot of work. So
yes.
Did you have a team? And how many people in your team?
We had a team about 5 people that, showed up. We had weekly meetings to kind of push everything along. So we had people contacting vendors, people, talking to their managers about promoting the poster idea. And then our marketing staff was really huge in helping get the word out. They put stuff up on our internal website. I think they were going to use some of the content for future marketing. And one of the things I hadn't thought of is they saw it as a recruiting opportunity by having these events and having, being innovative and promoting innovation technology. They thought it would be a good way to encourage people to come and apply to our organization and become part of it and show that we are not just, we have a lot of life in our company. We have a lot of vim and vigor and just, so we had a lot of support. It was really good. Good team helped me out for sure.
That's great.
Yeah.
I also like the idea of lightning talks. We might see that at the next GIS day. Those
are super fun.
Because I think there's a lot of people who have something they want to share, but maybe they feel like it's not quite fleshed out yet, or it's not necessarily a huge project, but it's kind of like a cool map or just a small analysis. And you can just you can easily do a lightning talk where you might not necessarily want to do a full 20, 30-minute presentation. So.
And being able to do the whole thing virtually was key, because we can't get people from 40 different offices in the same place, in the same room. So being able to do everything through Teams was really helpful.
Very good. And looks like Thad just volunteered you to do GIS Day.
No. No, less is enough.
Yikes. I know. I understand.
Yeah. All
Okay.
right.
Very
Thank you very
cool.
much for the opportunity to talk and share.
Sure thing. All right. And so it looks like we're on schedule because our next talk is supposed to be at 9:30. Well, I have one more question for you, Megan, since it's not 9:30 yet. I'll milk it for all it's worth.
Sure.
Um,
Go ahead.
you must, so I like the idea of the technology and innovation instead of just GIS.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to NEARC. I went to NEARC and they had someone talking about Power Automate with Windows. And I was like more excited about, they use it for a GIS piece, but I was like, oh my God, this technology is amazing and just beyond just GIS. So did you really appreciate seeing the other technologies? And before you jump, I'm sure you're gonna say yes, but what was like the spread? Was it like 50% GIS and 50% new technology? Was it 20% GIS and 80% new technology and innovation? What was the split?
I would put my video back on. I would say that what I found out was that all of the technologies can touch on GIS, whether it was, the surveying or the design, the all of the technologies that we covered. And I think that was the real kind of clutch thing about it, is that GIS is by its nature so interdisciplinary, because GIS isn't, is very agnostic in terms of what you want to do. It doesn't care if you're looking at survey data, demographic data, if you're looking at design, whatever it is, you can use GIS in partnership with all those technologies. So I thought that was really the key thing, is thinking of GIS not just as a way to make maps or a way to store data, but as a way to integrate your workflows, because you can use GIS as a conduit in all those applications. So it was really more about, I would say it all led back to GIS. And I think that's just the nature of GIS in of itself. It can work in all sorts of different ways. So if you want to promote GIS within your organization, there's probably an infinite amount of things you can do. It's a matter of being able to communicate the abilities of you and the software to your coworkers.
Very cool. Well, thank you, Megan.
Yeah, thank you.
Much appreciated. So it's 9:31. Thad, I'm gonna kick it off to you, and you can tell us all about cemeteries.
All right, thanks, Mike. Let's go ahead and share some screen, and I'm guessing everyone can see.
You can see it. Yep.
All right. So today's conversation, and I say conversation more so than a presentation, is going to focus on a cemetery project I did, but it's going to take an interesting twist. So hopefully you'll ride along with me. So where it all began. So let's go back a few years. The town of South Windsor's assistant TM and director of information, or chief information officer, Scott Roberts. He happens to live in the town of Coventry. I know you're saying, well, wait, what does Coventry have to do with this? The slide said Towle. So he lives in Coventry, and he had a relationship with the town manager there and some of the staff there at the municipal level. And they knew of his background in GIS, which goes back 20 plus years. And so they came to him with a request. They had some GIS needs, and they said, geez, can you help us out? And he said, well, we have a great team, at GIS in South Windsor. Maybe we can provide you with some mutual aid and make some sort of arrangement. So South Windsor started doing some support work for Coventry and GIS. And what they found out is that their IT infrastructure in Coventry was really struggling. It was really kind of struggling, when everyone here knows that that GIS by its nature is just very, very tech heavy, very technology heavy, and has a lot of needs. So they said, geez, we can also help you out with your IT needs if you want as well. And so that kind of snowballed into kind of this relationship between South Windsor and Coventry. And so the South Windsor happened to be doing a presentation at a regional IT group, and a member from Towle happened to be there, and said, geez, we see what you're doing for Coventry. Would you be willing to come and talk to the council in Towle and see if we can kind of partner up with you as well to provide some IT support for us? And of course, we said, sure, we'll go and talk. Well, again, that kind of snowballed as well. And they said, you know, we do this GIS stuff as well, if you'd be interested. It's again snowballed from there. We said, sure, we can provide you with some GIS. Let's have some meetings and see what you need. That in turn grew to additional communities hearing about it, and South Windsor now provides IT services for Andover as well as Towle and Coventry. So it's really kind of grown out of that and started all with that initial relationship and conversation. And of course, GIS in Towle, when we came to them and said, well, what do you need? And they said, well, we have this situation with our cemeteries. Now, cemeteries in Connecticut are kind of a growing issue. There's about 5,000 of them, and because of New England and where we are, they date back to the mid 1600s. I think the earliest one dates back to 1640 is one of the earliest cemeteries in the state. And these cemeteries, these 5,000 cemeteries throughout the state, are owned by various entities. Some of them are owned by towns and municipalities. Some of them are owned by private entities. Some of them are family cemeteries that are attached to homes and properties and things like that. And so you see all kinds of scenarios. And the sad thing is that in a lot of these cemeteries, and not all, I mean, you look at some of the big cities like New Haven, you look at Hartford, you look at Bridgeport. I mean, their cemeteries are well run, and we've seen presentations here in this group by Aaron Nash on the work that he did with the Hartford Cemetery. And so some of them are done really, really well. They're mapped and their records are maintained. I know West Hartford has a great setup as well. And so there are some great success stories out there, but there are a lot of what you want to call hardship cases, instances where you have cemeteries where records are not well maintained, and we don't know who's buried where, and we're paving over cemeteries and we're doing all kind of horrible things to them. So Towle was kind of in this situation. And again, South Windsor, we're kind of neighbors. We're 20 miles apart, plus or minus. We share some common neighbors. We provide support to Coventry. That's a kind of a joint neighbor. And so we kind of looked at it as, look, we're providing kind of this regional service. And so Towle came to us and said, well, we have 4 cemeteries, north, south, east, and Valley View. Why not west? I don't know. But anyway, so they have these 4 cemeteries, and they all date to various ranges of dates. You have some that are early 1700s. You have some that are, late 1900s that they started. And so records are in a myriad of conditions. Now, this is typical. This is not, I'm sure there's municipal folks watching today saying, yep, this is us. We have this exact same thing. You kind of see that bucket, if you will, or that trash bin, if you will, of rolled up maps. I was talking to the admin in the office, and she said, when I met her, she said, Paul always told me if the place ever starts to go on fire, to grab that bucket and run out the door and leave everything else. What you're looking at in this picture were at the time their only source of information on the cemeteries. Some of those maps you see rolled up, haven't been edited or modified in ages. Some of them are hand drawn. They're old, they're crinkled. When you look at the quality of the information on them, you can see they're in that center splotch. You've got blurred writing, you've got instances where whiteout was employed, you've got instances where stuff was taped on it, you've got stuff where stuff was crossed out and highlighted and markered over. And then those black boxes that you see there in the last frame, those are the 3x5 index cards that contain all the information about those plots. So not the most efficient when it comes to searching for information. Again, it's subject, to any sort of damage. Now, in the mid 80s, late 90s, they did have a firm go and catify some of their cemeteries. This one in particular, you can kind of see. So this particular drawing is very nice. Everything is squared off, everything is marked and labeled, but these CAD drawings, these original CAD drawing files were not accessible. In addition, you can see that they were further modified with that insert taped on the one centers panel there. and so, you know, it's been modified, but that was never updated into the original file. And you can see there's been markings and there's folds and there's tears and there's holes. So the bottom line I'm getting to is that their source material was deteriorating just as paper does, right? We know what happens to paper, right? And we know that the two biggest, you know, tragedies that can be suffered are right here. And we don't want that. Nobody wants that loss of data. Nobody wants that loss of information. But sadly, that's a real fear of folks. So what do? Well, we put it into GIS. The other challenge is that when you go to the cemetery and you say, okay, well, let's see if we can piece this together, you find this. Again, this is not uncommon. You know, stones that are deteriorating, stones that are just, you know, fading, stones that are crumbling, stones that are damaged. And when you're trying to piece together what's missing from the map, or if you're trying to clarify information on the map, going to the cemetery and thinking that, oh, we'll just, you know, GPS this, and oh, we'll just, you know, grab this information, and oh, we'll just, it's not always that easy. So it was a challenge of project, but nonetheless, they came to us and said, we need a solution. We know that GIS is a powerful tool. They listened to the you know, stories that they've heard that I had told them, stories that they had from other folks about how GIS helps solve problems. And they knew that they wanted their solution obviously to be digital, because staying on paper wasn't going to help them. It wasn't going to make it last longer than it currently was. They wanted it to be mobile. They wanted something that they could take into the cemetery, that they could help with people, with grieving families who are trying to find the graves, who are trying to choose a grave, with researchers who are trying to find their ancestors. They wanted something that was map-centric, because they knew that that was going to provide the best portrayal of the information. And obviously, they wanted something that was going to be user-friendly. So when I took all this into consideration and I looked at everything I had, I knew that the solution was pretty obvious. You know, I knew that by using ArcGIS Online, they could use it and access it on any device, anywhere that had a cell or internet connection. So whether it was a cell phone or an iPad or a tablet of some sort. I know that Esri has some great tools with the web app builder for ArcGIS. And you know, it's something that we all have become accustomed to and have become really familiar with. And so that was kind of the obvious. Okay, well, next step is what? Well, you go and you make a plan. You gather the maps, you scan the maps, you digitize. I mean, this is all common stuff, right? We're essentially dealing with a parcel project of 3-foot by 10-foot parcels, the smallest piece of property in town. And so it was pretty straightforward. We've all done this 1,000 times, you know, we kind of know how it goes. The problem is reality sets in, right? So we go and we acquire the source data, and we realize that, you know, we can't scan documents from, you know, the early 1900s or older. We can't put that through a roll scanner. We can't, you know, fold it and kind of jam it on a copier to scan it. So we end up taking digital photos using a camera and a tripod. Then we created our geodatabase. Now, we're very fortunate that in the past, the network working groups have put together at least a prototype template for a cemetery data standard. And so that was employed. And then we begin the hard work of kind of, you know, recreating those digital lines. Now, the challenge I ran into was, for whatever reason, my file geodatabases kept getting corrupt. I don't know if it was the amount of data or what, but I found that I would be trucking along, creating lines, creating polygons, putting in attributes, and for whatever reason, large swaths of my data would just disappear for no reason whatsoever. I've researched the heck out of this. I even posted up on the network. I couldn't find a rhyme or reason. The only thing I found that worked was by doing a database compress every now and then, it helped to minimize the occurrence. There were at least 2 instances where, for whatever reason, the data was unretrievable, and I had to resort to a network server backup from the previous night to get the data. And then I had to export it out and recreate the geodatabase, and there was a whole song and dance. But nonetheless, that was one of the challenges I ran into. The other was translating some of the writing. You have, multiple generations of folks who are maintaining these maps, and their handwriting differs. Some of them use cursive, which is very hard to read. Some of the lettering gets smudged. It's tough when you have conflicting information. You go to ground truth it, and you go to the cemetery, and the stone in the place on the map doesn't match the name that's on the map that's on the stone. And so you really it really was kind of a trial and error and fly by the seat of your pants kind of methodology of putting together the data. Ultimately though, you finished the cemetery. I published the app, and we were able to produce for them really nice ordered printed maps. And now they wanted the paper. I kind of explained to them that, geez, these are digital, and, paper can deteriorate, so on and so forth. But, old habits die hard, and folks like their paper maps. And so now at least they have some nice looking printed maps that they can, put up on a wall, that they can show to people when they come to the office, and they can still, work with them if they need to. But when we look at the digital app, as I said, we use the standard data model. So we followed the idea of map, block, and lot for location. In this case, it was section, row, and plot. We added the typical stats to the deceased records. As you can kind of see here for Mr. Kingsbury, his date of birth, date of death, age, military information, and this third-party web page, which I found when I was trying to kind of work my way through and verify information. It's a web page called Find a Grave. And so I was able to create a link to the Find a Grave webpage for each grave that was occupied. And it really was my saving grace. There is a volume of information for a good majority of the graves. Now, not every grave is captured. This is kind of a grassroots, crowdsourced, voluntary provided information. But it did help in a lot of instances. They provide photographs in some instances of the gravestone. And so you could go and verify the person's name. You could look at the gravestone and see, oh, they're also, their husband is, Frank, and he's, buried next. Okay, so yes, I can find that record and kind of fill in that gap. So this was a really, really great resource that I used very, very heavily in this project. And in general, it's a pretty interesting web page. It's worth checking out even at a rude curiosity level. Go in and search your last name, search last names of other loved ones, and see what's in there. So here's the app. I would have done a demo, but I'm always kind of worried about live demos. In these sort of instances, you never know with the internet and technology and things. So I figured I'd play it safe. So this is essentially a screenshot. There are 2 apps. The first one is the desktop app. They wanted something where they could maintain the data going forward. These cemeteries are no pun intended, but living, breathing entities. There's going to be changes. There are going to be people who come and have their loved ones buried, or their cremains moved, or something like that. So they wanted to be able to maintain this. So here you can see this is the editing environment. And the graves are symbolized when you zoom in, the green being open and available, the pink being unknown, where they don't know if someone's buried there, if someone's not buried there. There's kind of mixed information. The darker gray are occupied, and the lighter gray show that it's been purchased and reserved, but it is not full yet. So they're able to go in, they're able to provide all the information as you saw here. They can fill in that information when someone does get buried. And there are also instances where I didn't have the information to fill in. And so, you know, there are gaps, and they know that they have the information somewhere in their records. They can go in and fill in the gaps that I left. There's also a mobile version. As I said, they wanted something that they could take out into the cemetery to show folks, you know, and help them find their loved ones, so they can, you know, search for the grave by name or by owner, and then locate it, and then they can use the embedded GPS on the device and help them locate, you know, where they are in relation, and essentially navigate to the grave. Also, for marking out graves, they wanted a measuring tool, and they also wanted a print tool, because they said sometimes they will, you know, go into the office with a loved one, and being able to print from the app to provide a, you know, a paper document, if you will, or a map showing, okay, this is where your loved one's grave is, or this is the grave that you purchased, or this is the grave that you intend to purchase. So being able to provide a printed document to the public was important to them as well. So they're all targeted tools. As you can see, it's kind of sparse. There's not a lot on there. Simply just search, measure, print, and locate, and then being able to identify the graves. Now, this shot also shows one of the tools they wanted was show me where all the available graves are in the cemetery. So you can kind of see there in that circle, the yellow squares are available graves. They wanted kind of a one-button push. When someone says, well, I'm looking for an available grave, instead of having to hunt and peck and go through, they wanted to be able to show all at once where all the available graves were. And so that's what that button does. Simply just does a mass filter selection and then highlights. And so that was the cemetery project. Now, random squirrel. The real crux of this project wasn't so much the cemetery. That was pretty much just the vehicle for the presentation. The idea is, you know, the haves helping the have-nots. We as a GIS community know that among us, there are communities and entities that are fortunate enough to have staff and technology and funding and capabilities to employ a robust GIS program. And there are communities and organizations within our state that are the have-nots. Their budgets are much smaller, their staffing is much limited, their technology access is also just as limited, if not more. And there's really an opportunity here for the haves to kind of reach out to the have-nots. Now, I'm not trying to put any of our vendors out of business by any sense of the word, so this is with all due respect to them. But there are instances where the smaller communities may not be able to afford the vendor's price for, let's say, a small project like this, but perhaps a neighboring community, and they can work out an arrangement where an agreement can be had between the two communities to you know, help a neighbor, you know, reach over the fence, so to speak, and lend them that hedge clipper, or geez, let me just get that hedge in front of your house, kind of thing. And in turn, helping to preserve this data. As I said, that picture of the bucket of rolled up maps and the tin boxes of the index cards is not uncommon. I'm sure that you know, a good number of those 5,000 cemeteries throughout the state are in that very state right now, and they're being maintained by, you know, elderly folks who are kind enough to donate their time and volunteer to kind of maintain these records, and they're doing the best they can. But we all know that flood and fire are, you know, on the doorstep at any given moment. And so that's really what the presentation is about. The cemetery project is really just kind of the vehicle for that idea. It was a challenge. It was adventurous, and I'm proud of it. It's something that it's going to live on kind of in perpetuity long after I'm gone. Maybe I'll be in one of those 3x10 squares someday, and they'll be putting my name into one of those boxes. But I'll take questions if anyone has. I've got my contact information up here if folks want to reach out to me. I see Meg has her hand up and a comment in the window. Meg, if you wanted to talk, go ahead, unmute.
Yeah, sure. I was wondering, so who is going to cover the hosting of the application in ArcGIS Online? Did they get a free account, or is the town going to host it?
So the town did and is funding an ArcGIS Online. They have 4 of them. They have 4 ArcGIS Online accounts. And again, that's going to be considerably less expensive than annual maintenance on a full-blown enterprise GIS system of their own.
The cemetery might be able to get their, as a nonprofit entity, they might be able to get one of those like cheap or free, if, because if you got hit by a bus and somebody forgot the ArcGIS Online password. That's just one of the things that we hit up often is how do we manage the longevity of the organization?
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely.
But this is a great product that you've developed.
Yeah, so they have 4 licenses or four logons, if you will, for ArcGIS Online. I only use one of them for the data development and testing, but they have them recorded in their IT department or their IT records for all their passwords and logons. So they have full access to the ArcGIS Online, and they'll maintain it going forward. Like I said, it was really just the data development aspect that they needed help with because they don't have GIS staff. I see Rich has a question here in the chat. Cemetery folks have concerns about the accuracy of the mapped plots given the source maps. No, I mean, ultimately what I'm giving them is leaps and bounds in terms of accuracy over what they currently have. Like I said, there were countless discrepancies in terms of what the map showed and what the stones said. And I did my best to try and figure it out and to try and correct things. You'd go on to Grave Finder and see, oh geez, they misspelled this name or they had this date wrong. So I know that ultimately what I'm giving them is leaps and bounds over what they currently have. So yeah, their concerns for accuracy, I think, kind of went by the wayside. I see Mike. Mike, you have a question, and then I see Kristen. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna thank you, Thad, for your presentation. I understand the situation is very grave. And that they have a hard time doing this data themselves. They get buried in the work they're doing. All right, I can't help myself, but I did just wanted to shout out that there were some hands raised for Kristen Labrie. I have a bunch of questions too, but I'd rather hear from the audience.
You're digging deep, Mike. Kristen, go ahead.
Terrible.
Go ahead, Kristen.
GIS comedy is not dead, huh, Mike?
Oh.
That was a great presentation. This is a very cool project. I've been in love with cemeteries for a long time. I actually trained originally as an archaeologist, an historical archaeologist, and I've been working on a long-term project in Rhode Island to map their cemeteries. But what I've been looking for is essentially the cemeteries where nothing exists any longer. So sort of predating what we're used to seeing as cemeteries. And so one of the things that I've found is, first of all, we're used to seeing a cemetery. We know what a cemetery looks like. One thing to keep in mind as you're doing cemetery work is that Native and Black American cemeteries often don't have markers or originally had wooden markers. So there's certain things that you look for. Another thing I found is just using town clerk maps and historical maps, and meaning, back in the day maps. The first maps of the town oftentimes have a little cross on it or have a little, CEM on the map. So as far as also, helping folks out, if there's anybody that, like I said, I love this stuff. So if there's anybody who's doing a cemetery project that could use some help on it for, historical research, for doing any sort of that stuff, to get in touch with me, because this is so cool.
I agree, and I hear everything you're saying, Kristen. I appreciate the information. Yeah, there were, it's funny you talk about the Native American and the African American graves. There are plenty of graves that non-ethnic, if you will, non-ethnic graves. There were lots of graves in the Towle cemeteries where it showed full on the map, but there was no stone, there was no marker. It was just, it was just spaced out. And so you don't know. I mean, it says on the map and it has dates when they were buried. there's just nothing there, or maybe you see the foundation of what used to be there and it's gone, or the stone was wiped clean, as I kind of showed in some of my pictures. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely some challenges. Age is not kind to anything, whether it's the maps, whether it's the gravestones. So yeah, there's plenty of challenges. So yeah, any other questions? Like I said, I see here Mark Kazanskis chiming in. So yeah, good information. Yeah, legacy is definitely a word that we've thrown around. And as I said, there's 5,000 cemeteries in the state. I know I've had this conversation with someone from the network in the past about the concerns with regards to lost data. And do zombies ever become an issue? Not that I saw when I was traipsing around the cemetery, but you do get some interesting looks when you're kind of walking around a cemetery on a regular basis, and some of the neighbors kind of look over and want to know what you're doing, that kind of thing. But
Sure.
it was a great project. I was glad I was able to contribute. I was glad I was able to help, and I encourage folks out there to reach out to your neighbors and see if you can help. And like I said, I'll be more than happy to respond. My email's there. Don't hesitate to reach out to me and do what I can. So let's put a nail in this one and call it done.
Thanks, Thad. I think I might even try to put this out for a regional project and get a bunch of college students under a good supervisor and have them go out and do a bunch of field work and collect data and find a grave. I think it's a really good COG project.
Absolutely.
If you're interested in genealogy too, the Find a Grave is really awesome. Like for finding spouses and kids and second husbands and third wives and all that kind of stuff. It's great for genealogy.
Very cool. All right, so we are at the 10 o'clock block. So before you jump off and get a snack or a cup of tea or whatever have you, I have a poll. We have an education chair seat to fill. There is someone, Dr. Kurt Schlitting is interested in being our education chair for the steering committee. He is a professor at Fairfield University and he's the only one running. So, but just for the order of operations, we have to do a vote. So I will launch the poll. It looks like there is another option. Very good. All right. So it's Mike Towle and Nick Trabka today. We're going to present how we use GIS to help answer the question on where to build a regional firing range. And the question was actually hyper-focused on for the police departments. There are a whole bunch of factors for placing a firing range. We'll get into that. All right, next slide, Nick. Oh, if you don't know me, I'm a deputy director at WestCog, and Nick is a data scientist at WestCog. So today I'll talk about the background. I'm doing less and less GIS work every week. It's sad. I'm just watching it go down the toilet. But Nick gets to do more and more each week as I pass my full task to him. And so I'll talk about the project side of it. I'm doing more planning work. I'm trying to get involved with starting regional programs and services to be up and started. So in this case, I'm working with police departments on a firing range. And I'll tell you about where the project came from, the background information, why they need it, what's their case for it, a little bit about the product itself, and some numbers about the firing range. So you have an idea of what's going on there. Then we're going to pass off to Nick, who's got the GIS work behind this. He's going to talk about what data we needed, the commuting patterns that come up that he was looking at, how we built our surveys to collect information. And then we did a bonus analysis recently for firing range capacity. We were looking at firing ranges and how much they can handle. And then we'll finalize with the lessons learned, and we'll each cover some lessons on the planning side, what I'm working on, and then lessons on the data side. And Nick will talk about that. All right, Nick. Next slide.
Yeah.
Thanks. All right, so you probably know what a COG is. There are those pseudo counties out there. We're in that southwest corner from Greenwich to New Milford, and we work for the towns directly. The first selectmen mayors, they tell us what they want. And OPM, has said they want to see regional services get up and started in the state of Connecticut. They're really pushing for it. They gave us grant money to do regional services. And this is, I think, our third year getting this money. Our first year, we did a bunch of studies because we're trying to understand. We're asking the towns, what do you want us to research? And they listed solid waste, animal control. They've considered grant writers or stormwater projects, or how do you modernize their technology? And public safety was also mentioned. And so this project is about the public safety side, the research that went in there. And so in essence, we have put in all this work to do these studies for public safety. The CEOs and first selectmen asked us to do it. And we tried having some meetings, but it wasn't really going anywhere. And then alas, a huge grant became available. It's the Regional Performance Incentive Program. And this is a specialized grant that's mostly for COGS. There are these regional education areas that can apply to, but mostly COGS apply to these grants. This is to kind of fund big projects. So I said, look, we can get potentially millions of dollars to help fund the construction of a firing range, and we can make this thing happen. And then everybody wanted to meet. So fun fact, money matters. All right, next slide. So what's the need of this, right? Obviously, firearms and police are very hot button issues in society, and it's not something to be taken lightly. And so the need has to be kind of really clear. You know, what is the point of this? So for the police departments, they have requirements they have to meet to use and handle and be trained in how they handle their weapons, their firearms. So the minimum requirements that they have for firearms specifically is for pistol and rifle training. And that is for, a variety of responses that they might be called in for. Obviously police officer pistol is a common sight, but the rifle is not, but they are trained in that, and it's a requirement. So they have those basic requirements. They also, due to a public act on public safety that was passed, I think last year or 2 years ago, they have increased requirements for like de-escalation tactics and like when to use firearms and different ways of how they approach escalation of an encounter. So they have increased time they have to spend for training. On the flip side, firing ranges are becoming more and more scarce. There's only a limited amount of firing ranges that are available. Firing ranges are closing down because they're loud and they have environmental concerns, and people are uncomfortable with them. So these are outdoor ranges typically. As we expand and develop more properties and houses and neighborhoods, the areas that might have been a good spot that have been operating for years, an outdoor range, now become suddenly are close to residents, and they don't like the firing ranges there. So the police departments are currently narrowly meeting their current requirements, and they're doing it at an increased cost. In order for them to get the training for all their police, they have to kind of find firing ranges that are really far away, or they have to find firing ranges and send their police officers on overtime. So they're paying for overtime, travel, and all these things to kind of find these rare pockets so they can get each person trained. And ultimately, and because of that, they're all interested in building firing ranges. And these projects are expensive. A firing range requires, and you can't just simply build outdoors because then it gets shut down. So an indoor range, and that requires a specialized construction for the noise baffling, to the backstop, which receives all the ammo that gets hit. You need environmental cleanup. So it's got a lot of odd architecture to it on how it's handled. So instead of having one firing range be built in every town, you could have one firing range built for multiple towns. And that is immediately a cost saving on the construction end. So that's why there's the need. That's why they're pushing for the firing range project. It was also identified in the studies that we did. Down below, you can see pictures of our studies. We had 3 studies done. One was looking at public safety in general. Another looked at where we currently are. And then the next one is looking at specifically how do we implement a firing range. All right. So this project, to have this shared firing range, we have to figure out how we're going to pay for it and how it's going to be managed and owned. So that's what we're kind of working on. And there's a link down here to the project website. I can send that in the chat soon. All right, Nick, next slide. All right, so a little bit of the background numbers on the firing range. We have 17 communities that reached out and said they were interested. Some of them weren't even in our COG. They're outside our COG. We've already spent $143,000 on planning. These planning documents, obviously, for a whole planning project, there's 3 plans. Already a substantial amount of investment gone into this. This includes all the public safety. This isn't just firing ranges only. It also looks at PSAP and dispatch, but up to now, we spent $143,000. The minimum firing range they want to build will be about 60 yards long, so almost a football field. Almost finish the touchdown. 15 lanes, and we suspect the cost would be somewhere between $6 to $8 million based on estimates that we got from other building designs. We have 1,200 officers in the West Cog region. And if you were to operate a firing range to maximum capacity, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, if every lane is filled, you could serve 1,500 officers in that firing range. So I think it's more likely probably half that. It would be reasonable. And that's just an estimate. Here's an example of a structure of what a firing range would look like. You got the bullet trap, you got where they'd shoot the firing range, changing areas, things like that. All right, so where do you build? This is where I'm going to pass it off to Nick. Before I do, we had a meeting and it went off the rails. It can go off the rails for 2 reasons. One, for funding discussions, which I was trying to kibosh and focus on the building itself, but also for location. Every municipality wanted it in their town. And they're even making arguments. They're saying, look, you live in Southwest Connecticut. The police officers can't even afford to live in these communities. They live outside these communities. And, should you even build the range in these in this region? Should it be outside the region? Build it in our town. And so they went back and forth. So I jumped in, having that GIS background. I said, look, we can look at all these locations. We can look at where your police officers are. We can figure out the best location. We'll get back to you. So that's what we went out and did, and Nick's going to take you through that.
All right, thanks, Mike, for the background. So yeah, Mike was just saying we had to figure out a couple things for our officers and for their training. So we wanted to find one location. That was our goal. One location for the best location for the firing range. So the data that we needed to collect initially were available locations where there already was a range that we could utilize. Or a location where we can build a fresh firing range. And then the second piece of information that we needed were the commuting patterns of the officers. Because like Mike said, we found out in the meetings, we should have known this, but the officers don't necessarily live next to their police stations where they work. So people are commuting from all over the state, and we got to find a centralized location because some people might be commuting from their home right to a training facility. We wanted to take into consideration officers commuting from their stations to the training facility. So we had a bunch of commuting patterns to worry about. So initially, we wanted to collect the origin data of all of our officers. We had an idea to create a web map that we would send out to the chiefs of the departments to find out non-precise home locations of their staff. The product, like I said, was a web map, web app. And we were going to ask the officers to put 1 point for each officer in their census tracts of their home location census tract. So not on their house. We don't really want to know where they live for, sensitive data reasons, but we want a good starting point so we can have their commuting patterns. The collection process was not easily explained. These are the instructions here. We tried making them as simple as possible. I did from a GIS background, but I'm sending this out to people who don't use maps and don't use, ArcGIS online every day. So it was a little bit confusing. This is what the example of the map looked like, covered in census tracts. We just wanted 1 dot for each. So this was kind of overwhelming for police chiefs to see initially. And then we're also asking them for sensitive data on top of that. So overall, I could just say this was up for about a couple hours and we took this right down. This was not a great data collection process. So we wanted to keep it in this presentation to show it was an option to collect data, but for this one scenario, it wasn't the best way to do it. All right, so next, Mike had the great idea, send out a location data survey. So we were just going to go collect the origin municipality from where officers were commuting from. So forget census tracts. We just want 1 point from one town where they're commuting from for each officer. This is going to help with the sensitive data issue and the complexity of collecting this data for the police chiefs and time, because they don't want to be spending all day putting dots on a map. So we based the survey on the requirements that we knew for the departments. Some departments require their officers to report to the station first, the department within the region here, and then to go to training. And other departments had a 30-minute drive shed. I don't know if it was a requirement for their officers to live within, or they said all of our officers live within this 30-minute drive shed of our department. So those were some of the options that we had that helped us create the survey. So the options were just provide a list of the municipalities, assume all officers live within 30 minutes of their respective departments, or we could just say all officers are commuting from the department. We're not going to tell you where they live, and that's fine. We got 10 out of our 18 towns to reply to this survey. So this is what the data looked like once we got it loaded into the GIS and we started doing analysis on it. So on the right here is a sample survey that that we sent out in the green over here. So just the list and count of officers that commute from that municipality, and then obviously we know who answered it, so we know where they're going. We use the municipal centroid for each location. We weren't going to need to get more specific than that. If it's plus or minus 15 minutes, you know, it kind of like evens out for everyone across the board, or that's what we assumed when we were running this. And then, so if for the town, we had 8 towns not answer the survey, that's fine. We had this great data set, the numbers of sworn officers from 2011, Connecticut Police Department statistics. We were able to collect the numbers, the sworn officers from those departments, and we filled it in saying those officers needed to commute from their department to the training facility, don't care where they started from their home locations. So we had all the numbers for all the stations, how many people work there and how many people are commuting from where. We can see all the municipalities up here, and we can see all the stations down here. Okay, so to organize the data, this is how it kind of came in. This is on the left here, we have just total counts. So this is a mix of the sworn officers and the survey results. We can see how many officers work at each station. And then on the right would be the origin data for the towns that answered our survey, which is great. And it kind of came in like that. We just added it up. How many people are coming from where, what town, and where are they going? Let's see. So the map on the left here is showing one of the many iterations that we ran for the network. And we used network analysis to use starting locations, the stations and the home locations. And we already had possible locations from the meetings that Mike was running. We had training facilities that already existed at some of the municipal departments. Some of them had indoor, outdoor locations. We had a few empty plots that people were considering that were brought up. So all of this was brought up by police chiefs in the meetings that were going on for the public safety study. So we had the possible locations, and those are these orange dots here. And we ran network analysis. We did a whole bunch of them, everything that you can basically imagine. We did drive time analyses, and then we did shortest distance, shortest time. So from starting locations, this one is from municipalities to facilities. And that's what this kind of looks like here. So here are three more examples of things that we ran. So down here, this bottom one is drive shed analysis. We wanted to see if we can get most people within 30 minutes of a selected facility location. Here we have 4 kind of priority locations that cover the region, really blanket it kind of well. So we have that 30-minute drive shed around each of them. We did stations to facilities. So one time we decided to just ignore all municipalities that officers are commuting from and say everyone is stopping at their station first and then going to training. So we did a weighted analysis for here. So we want to see what the different departments, where the station would wait to. So we have all of our options over here. I think there was about a dozen possible locations. And then we did an unweighted one because we don't know how many officers are going to be working at that station forever. It's never going to be the same. We want everyone to kind of have an equal opportunity. So like we just took into consideration a lot of different aspects to try to find, one best facility. Let's see. So we did this. We wanted to look for, one range. We took a look at two ranges, which ones are going to be in the middle, which ones are the best accessible to everyone. And once we had all this kind of data, we didn't really know which one to pick because as you can see, these are all, we got a bunch of different answers here. We have one in Danbury, Stamford, Wilton, Norwalk. So we didn't really come up with one answer that satisfied what we were looking for. So then that's when we did the drive time analysis. And we wanted everyone to just kind of drive the least amount of time. We wanted it to be close to everyone. It didn't matter where it was location-wise, as long as everyone could drive to it in a reasonable time. So that's when we had drive times for all the home locations and all of our stations. And that's when we moved out of GIS and our analysis became tabular. So this is all of our outported data from the drive time analysis. We can see the facilities listed on the left here. That's just the location. And then the median drive time that it would take for, everyone, all 1,250 officers to drive to these facilities. We have it from department to facilities and officer origin. So these are just our 10 municipalities that answered our survey to the same facilities. This is the same facilities list on the left and the right here. Whoopsies, let's go back. So we wanted to select the right location, so the median time. We included the sum and the hours and days. Oh, and then the box and whisker plots. I was going to ask Mike to jump in here because he made this.
Yeah,
show
sure. So when we jumped to this tabular format, right, we were just simplifying the whole question down, boiling it to the one fact. If you were to add every single officer and add the amount of minutes they spend in that car driving to the range, and you sum it all up and you look at those totals, then we were able to kind of conclude what is the best choice based on time spent driving. And that was a very neutral and quantitative way to look at all officers, all departments, and all firing ranges across from one another. And it knocked out that what we were previously doing of looking at all the different maps and options. In essence, we were exploring a solution, right? So Nick showed all those different maps that we had. It was like, do we do a network analysis? Do we look at, and it was kind of hard to imagine because you couldn't really easily compare. We'd have to do a bunch of analyses. But this let us look very evenly across the board. The whisker plot was just kind of showing the variation in results that we got. And I was kind of to see who had the shortest and who had the max and what the average standard deviations were. So that was just kind of showing the step that we took to see how similar they were. In fact, I don't remember why I have 4 whisker plots. I know we did 2 types of analysis, so I should only have 2, but I think there was an argument for that. It's been a while since I looked at the whisker plots. But
yeah. But as you can see, we did select the Wilton transfer station as the winner for both of these analyses. All right. Oh, and then, okay, so Mike added that we wanted to find out the capacity of the ranges that already existed in Connecticut. So if we're not going to build another one, if we can just, shuffle people around and utilize what is already built. So we had this firing range capacity survey because we had such good luck with the first survey. We said, we're doing another survey. So we came about, and we asked everyone to say, where are the facilities and do they have do they have eligibility for more people to train there, or are they at capacity as it is right now? We want to know how many lanes they had because that was one of our criteria. If it supports rifle training, It's indoor, outdoor, and the hours of operation. And so we got really good responses on this. We had all of our questions that we wanted to know. Let me see, I think I have the data here. Oh yes, so here's the data from the survey. These are all the facilities that existed, and obviously the questions that we asked. And then Mike did a pretty slick thing here, and he made a capacity score based on all of this data. So we could kind of map it, because you can't really look at this and see, hey, I can go train at Monroe Police Department. We kind of wanted to map it, show if there was, so people can, like, use this as a resource, so the officers could use this as a resource. So this is the first map that you guys saw, and it is the already built firing ranges and their capacities. Like I said, Mike was able to quantify and create a capacity score, which we were able to use to say if the range had any availability, if the range didn't meet the training requirements, meaning if it wasn't long enough, or if they didn't have the appropriate like rifle training or anything like that, it wasn't going to be great. So for our region, you can see New Milford, Bridgewater, Newtown, all the way down here. There are nowhere with eligibility for police training. So it really just kind of supported our idea that we needed to build a new facility, or the places with eligibility were kind of way outside the region. And based on other meetings, we already saw that officers needed to commute to their departments first, check in, get their gear, and then go to training. We found out that the home location to the training facility was not going to be an option. So this really just supported the idea that we needed to build a new training facility kind of within our region, because all of this is, at capacity or at limited capacity. So yeah, out of the 19 available locations, 9 were functioning at capacity, and that included half of the ranges within Westcog were at capacity already, and the only eligible ones were outside of the region. So I'll move on quickly. All right, so we'll go over some lessons learned pretty quick.
All right, thanks, Nick. And in fact, we'll skip the lessons learned. I'll just talk about one of them, but we should jump to questions because we're getting close to 10:45.
Yep.
But just the fact that for this project, once we presented to them the data, the police officers thought that was really good. They didn't have any more concerns about it. It might be they have concerns down the road. They saw that we did the work, but it really kind of hushed that issue. And if they do have questions, we have the data to go and talk to it. So I just wanted to give that shout out. And we're working on this project right now, and I'm putting together a grant application. We're using the data in this study to make the case for those. All right, so that's our presentation. I will take questions now, and it looks like you have a question from Thad.
Yeah, so Mike, it's interesting. So they tried to do a firing range up here in Willington, up in the quiet corner. And it was actually met with a lot of resistance from town people. They had the public input meetings, and I mean, it was torches and pitchforks kind of thing. It was pretty ugly. So I was just curious, when you were having your meetings, if there was any public input and how it was received. I mean, it sounds like you're getting a lot of desire from maybe the elected officials and those kinds of things. But I was wondering if you got any public input, and if so, what that was like. Because like I said, up here in the quiet corner, it was, I mean, they tried 3 different locations and people put up all kind of crazy, objections to it.
Yeah, certainly. Thad, do you know if that firing range is going to be indoor or outdoor?
I think they were trying for the outdoor first, and then they were looking at indoor, and people just didn't want it for 1,001 reasons.
Yep. So we suspect that we're going to have resistance for this project. We are specifically doing an indoor range because we know folks are not interested in having outdoor ranges near them, and there was a lot of resistance for that. And we have a consultant on hand who has worked on projects like this, and more importantly, we have our elected officials and our chiefs that are willing to champion the project and stand by it. So while we might have resistance, we hope that it's the elected officials that can kind of help navigate those conversations with those communities that might have some resistance, and hopefully we can find some kind of common ground agreement. So that's our plan. Yes, we expect problems, and we hope that we can help showcase come up with solutions. And the map might even justify it, right? We can't say there's nowhere else to build this. You know, do you want police officers that are not trained with their firearms? You know, those would be questions for the public to consider. You know, where else could you build it? You know, so it's tricky. It is tricky when there will be resistance, I'm sure of it. All right, New Britain. I'd like to know if you found a parking garage. So is this the idea of building it in a parking garage in New Britain? We haven't considered parking garages. That none were raised for that, and we're kind of sticking to the Westcog region. But I don't see. I think it'd be possible, right? It's made of cement. You probably have to reinforce it, but it's possible. Any other questions? You can raise a hand, Q&A, chat. Do the police departments work with the Connecticut ARNG at all? Can they use their firing ranges? So I don't know what the ARNG is, but I do know that the police departments
Or National Guard, Mike, or
Oh,
Army
National Guard.
National Guard. Yeah.
yeah, thank you. So they do share. So they'll be like, you know, do you have they do seek availability wherever it's possible, and even outside of police officer ranges. So I do know that they're in communication with the other ranges. Yep. And then if this range has capacity, it might be used by National Guard or other folks too. So Nicole asked about environmental considerations. So for indoor ranges, not really. You don't have to worry about the environmental concerns. I'm sure for construction you do, and it might come up, but like if it's saying it's a wetland or something, but what's supposed to happen is it's all indoors, and you have a bullet trap that captures the lead waste from the bullets. And then you have to hire a specific company to remove it. It's all regulated on how that's handled. And so the police departments are held liable to damages. So they have to take that pretty seriously. And they moan about it because it is expensive, but it ensures safe removal. Is it only for police departments or open to the public? I have shot at a firing range, and I enjoyed it. Yes, would that be great? Currently, the police departments are looking at access for only police officers. They're not close to the idea of public access on weekends or something like that, but it does allow revenue to support the firing range. But they first want to make sure that they're meeting their target numbers. Hartford Gun Club offers ranges to man the police departments. Yes, there are local gun clubs. Very good, Steve. So Worcester Mountain in Danbury is a public gun club. It's built on state land, and that is being shut down for half its usage because it is an outdoor range, and people are now complaining about the noise. So that's really what triggered the need. Oh, Michael D's got a question. Go ahead, Michael D. Amato. You got your hand raised? Are you muted?
Sorry, I must hit that by mistake. I do not have a question.
All right, no problem. Okay, it's 10:47. We went over. So that's it. Thank you, everybody. We're gonna jump to our next speaker now, and that's gonna be Mike D'Amato. All right, Mike, you should have the ability to share a screen.
Let me see. It will not let me start my video.
Oh, let me do it for you. Co-host. And you are now a co-host. You should have powers now. Thanks, Nick, for running the slides and presented.
First.
All right. Still, there we go. There's one. Let me see if I can get this shared.
Excellent. I see it loading. It's up. Take it away.
Okay. So hopefully I can change the slides correctly and not get too screwed up here. So thank you for having me. My name is Michael D'Amato. I'm a principal at the Tyche Planning and Policy Group. And I know Thad had mentioned that probably the title in the program as advertised in your agenda is different than what I'm calling this, but my goal is to talk to you today just about how I use GIS in my day-to-day projects, and I consider myself to be a non-GIS person. I know how GIS works, and I'm taking classes in GIS, and I see it as a very powerful tool, but I'm not the person that can actually get some of that done in most cases. I rely on people smarter and more capable than me, basically the people that are in the room here. But I think that overall GIS has worked to solve a number of problems and provide answers in a much more efficient and effective way. So I'm going to go through a couple of different examples of things that we've implemented, projects that we've worked on, just sort of to complement the things that we're doing overall, and I think made the projects and tasks better because we were able to implement some of these things. So if anybody has questions, you can stop me at any time or wait till the end. I'm totally cool with that. So first project example, this is something that we did for the town of East Windsor, and I guess I should caveat most of this with this is all related to GIS and mapping and data. It's not all about ArcGIS. A lot of the communities we're in don't have these licenses. They don't have people that can do this regularly. So we're having to use other alternatives, one of which is Google Maps. So in this example, we were working to showcase developable properties and try to bring information to realtors and developers to them in a different format. Rather than going through the zoning regs and the assessor's records and all these other things, we wanted to try to provide something in a bit more of a concise way that could be shared more easily and be more interesting to interact with than 200 pages of zoning regs. So basically what this is here is a list of commercially developable properties that have development potential. And we've separated them out into various categories, which you can see. And as you can kind of make out, hopefully it's large enough to at least see what it is on the right-hand side. When you click on an individual link, we will provide you with the information that we have for that property. If there are known issues related to wetlands or flood zones, if we have a site plan or any type of information on the property, we'll attach it so that you can see that. Include something like the real estate assessor's assessment so they can get a sense of what the property is currently valued at. If we have realtor information or ownership contacts so that we can put them directly in communication with those folks, we include that. And again, it's just, a way to answer the question of, I want to do this in town, where can it happen? Or, I am interested in learning a little bit more about this property, but I can't make it into town hall because maybe COVID or whatever. And so trying to put that information in their hands in a less traditional way. It's been live for roughly 6 months. We've had, you kind of make out there, about 3,700 views, which, we're happy with. We think that's a reasonable traffic for a smaller town. Next one was the soils-based zoning analysis versus traditional sort of Euclidean zoning. The map on the left is the soils map. The map in the middle is the current zoning map. And I'll get to the map on the right. But basically, the town was in the process of going through the development of their affordable housing plan. Every town in Connecticut needs to have one. And we're talking about areas that we might be interested in exploring increased density. And rather than setting arbitrary density caps based on, okay, this zone, you can build this density or this many houses, we were looking at areas that might be most appropriate for increased density. So we looked at the soils maps. Some towns move in a direction of soils-based zoning. And then through an analysis, essentially overlaid that with the current zoning map to get an area, to get areas which we're calling hotspots, or the optimal properties which would be supportive of these increased densities. And then we can go through and select that based on what roads they're on and other things to sort of derive those zoning changes. So this is sort of a step 1, step 2, step 3, mapping here. And so we're having that discussion currently with the commission, and being able to drill down to this level and show them that these are the areas is helpful, because then it's something that is more tangible and that they can really start to develop opinions on. The other thing that was kind of interesting is that, I don't know that you can see it or can see my mouse, but just above this red line, which bisects the town on the third map to the right, you'll see an area in pink, and there's a lot of parcels there, which is a fairly densely populated neighborhood. And so to see those align, is to see a hotspot fall exactly where a more densely populated area currently is, it sort of shows that the math works, that the rationale behind how we got there makes sense. So that was sort of an added benefit. The next one is looking at multifamily build out potential. So we worked with the Open Communities Alliance on a project in the town of Glastonbury. And as part of developing a fair share housing plan, really spent some time looking at how they could increase the number of affordable housing developments in their town, and doing some traditional analysis of parcels that meet certain size requirements, that have access to sewer, so you don't deal with density issues, etc. And then using this map to literally come up with the roadmap, the steps to go from the small amount of affordable housing that they have to the 10%, which is the state's target. So it helps the position of the plan or the advocacy for making these changes, when you can show a map with data and actually back up what you're suggesting that they implement. And again, as you all well know, maps are much easier to identify with than data and spreadsheets and a lot of other sort of more boring information. So this is something that was much easier to digest. Back to the beta version of GIS, I guess, Google Maps. Something that I did for the town of Ashford, rural community, but we were talking about implementing changes to the zoning map, trying to get a sense of how we could make it a little more flexible, a little bit more business friendly, and align better with where things were in town. So the map on the right is the, sort of the existing setup for the zoning code, and the light yellow, I guess, is the residential, and then the darker areas are commercial industrial. And on the left-hand side, which I know is fairly small, is basically all the major businesses plotted out. So I worked with the assessor, and we pulled down all the data from her database and then categorized it, and then I plotted it. And so what we learned from this is that the majority of our existing businesses, which they like and want to support, don't exist anywhere close to the zoning map, which would support those types of uses. And so by showing them this distribution and allowing them to click on any one of those, I shared this with the commission via email, and they could interact with it. They could click on a property or a pin here, and it would tell them that the business, and it allowed them to really understand that the zoning map was not doing justice to most of the businesses, and again gets them more comfortable with advocating for changes, because there's something very tangible that says clearly what we have is not reflective of what we're trying to do. So very simple. I didn't have access to GIS, so I had to make do, but still was very effective. Another example, this is an ArcGIS online map that someone who I work with in the town of Willington made, and this was their first experience with ArcGIS online. And so basically we were considering a water line extension project, trying to understand the various options as Connecticut Water Company identified. And so we have these spreadsheets on the left with all these tables and all this data, which is, very informational, but doesn't do a whole heck of a lot, which we then translated into this map to show the various segments and costs associated with. The other thing that we did was these more, like, I guess, the teal color. We mapped the community and community systems, the non-transient community system, basically community wells that were in town. Town does not have any water service now. And the state is very interested, if possible, to get some of those users onto a water, a traditional water line if they can. So we were looking at proximity because that would help the project score if we were to go after any type of grant or funding of some kind. So we wanted to get a sense of where those existed so that we could start to build a better picture of the total users and who ultimately might. Oh no, my motion sensor just went off. Hold on one second. There we go. So it helped us to, again, bring everybody onto the same page and really get a sense of the viability of some of these things. And we shared this map via email with a bunch of people, and they could interact with these numbers and see these distances. We shared it with Connecticut Water when they were working on these estimates so that they could, again, get a sense of what we were trying to do. And we found it very helpful. Last example, and I guess I'm talking fast per usual because I'm early. But again, this is something we did with a web-based GIS that is hosted by a vendor for a community that I work in. Early on in COVID, town halls were closed. We really had no way of getting documents to owners, developers, real estate agents, contractors, et cetera. And, in racking our brains for the best way to do that, we basically took our digital scan files, which we had, and we added a file extension based on parcel ID. And we were able to transmit those and basically connect them through an FTP to our GIS vendor. And they're now linked when you go to the GIS. So on the right-hand side, you'll see this documents button and allowed uses button. So if you click the documents button, this pop-up on the left will show up for this particular property, and you can hit any of those and it will pull up the files and you can review them and download them. And then on the last link, allowed uses, we also connected a easy to use sort of cut sheet of the specific zone that property's in. So if you're in the DC zone, that particular pop-up will link residential, industrial, et cetera. But basically overnight, we were able to bring the entire contents of the building and land use office online. Posted a quick little screen record YouTube video of how to interact with the GIS site, how to search for these documents, how to download them, et cetera. So people come in and they email or call, and we pass them off to that information, and they're able to get that, download it to their computer, share it with potential buyers, potential contractors, and that information is available immediately. It wasn't a complicated thing. It didn't take very long, and it wasn't expensive. And we're able to bring this information to them, and it's been really, really helpful, particularly with COVID and just people moving into a more digital age, wanting to have access to that stuff at a time when it's convenient for them. Maybe they work third shift or something and they can't make it into town hall. So these are, I guess, a couple of examples, things that I am, happy to have been able to implement or work on. And I don't I don't pretend that any of these things are winning GIS Map of the Year awards. They are, in many respects, probably ugly, as some of you experts as far as how we put them together. But you know, the key is information, and a lot of folks are not yet comfortable with online mapping in some of these things in a few communities. So we're really focused on the information, but overall, that's been well received. Do I have to take a question from Thad first, or can I pick between Thad and Mike? Do I get
Well,
to choose this?
I think right off the bat, we'll just say thank you, Michael, for presenting, and you get the applaud. I don't know if you can hear it. Everyone's applauding on their computers, but we appreciate you taking the time to present your project concepts. Definitely start off with that. People hear enough from me, and they fire enough with that too. So if there's someone in the audience, we'll do that first. But Thad, take it away.
Hey, Mike, thanks for coming in today. Thanks for presenting. I love seeing what folks do with GIS. I mean, we talk here in our group time and time again. I mean, a lot of the same guilty suspects, you know, presenting their work, and it's great to see. But what I guess my question for you is, what are the things? I mean, you're coming from a planning environment, and we have several planners, and I can see a bunch of them in the list today. But from the planners community, what are the things that, you know, we in the GIS community can do? I mean, you talk about, you know, some of the communities have, and some of the communities don't have, and some folks embrace it, some folks don't embrace it. What can we do to try and make it easier for you to use GIS on these types of projects? You know, in terms of what we can provide you?
I think that from my perspective, the way that I look at it is, you know, with GIS, you get it or you don't. And, you know, I look at myself, I guess, as someone who I understand how powerful of a tool it is. I don't want to be the one making the map, but I want to have the map at my disposal. So I think that sometimes where the disconnect happens is that the folks, whether it be planners, whether it be economic development people, commissions, they don't necessarily know that a map or a GIS analysis can very easily and in a much more to a much higher accuracy answer the question they're trying to solve. And so I think it's trying to connect the folks that know how to do that with the folks that perhaps aren't aware how GIS can be used as a tool. So you can sort of say, oh, I can make a map for that. I can do that in GIS. I can pull something together, so that they can start thinking about all the different ways that it's used, rather than, you know, the things that we are sort of all used to, which is, oh, here's a wetlands layer, here's a zoning map, if that makes sense.
All right, Michael, I have a question I love the document updates portion of your presentation. Just such a simple concept. And I'm curious more about that process. You know, I'd like to see more of our towns in Westcog do that, and maybe we can help them out with that process. How were the documents in that example you gave? Where were they stored before? Were they stored as PDFs? Were they stored in just like a regular file directory on someone's computer? Were they cloud hosted? I know you moved them to the FTP, but was that something you did? They let you in and get in there and make copies? How did that all work?
So we have most of our files via PDF. We had a document management system because the town that I'm in doesn't have a very robust internal server, et cetera, et cetera. So when COVID first started, I called up that vendor of the document management system and I said, you know, I want to go live with the cloud. We were being hosted, but it wasn't on cloud-based or anything public facing. And they said, okay, well, yeah, we can do that. You got to upgrade your license. This is what's going to take time, blah, blah, blah. In, you know, $7,000 later, $8,000 later, you know, maybe we can get it done. And that to me, $7,000 to host PDFs is not viable, nor was it budgeted. So I said, thanks, but no thanks. I called up our GIS vendor and I said, I have this idea and I'm sort of want to spitball it with you. And we talked about it. And he said, if we can come up with a file structure that's consistent, and I can basically write, I don't know, code or whatever it is, this should be pretty simple. So the way that the files exist on our internal server now is it'll be 123 Main Street _ parcel ID. And so the system, wherever he wrote it, it just reads that file and it skips over and goes right to the parcel ID. And then it links to the GIS based on that parcel ID. So we export those files to an FTP, and their side checks that FTP nightly. So if I push a new extract of data, the next day it'll connect up. And we have been able to host them as PDFs or as TIFF. I prefer PDF, but for some people the file sizes are larger, so for a lot of them they are TIFF. But that was a very inexpensive project. It was like less than half of what they were going to charge.
Yeah. And so it sounds like for the maintenance side of it, the town is doing an export. So when you would everyone's working however they want to and then eventually someone does an export with the new files that are there. Is that correct?
Yep. So we have a folder on our sort of a shared drive. And when we get to the point where we have changes and we have things that we want to make live on the website, we basically push everything to that file, and then we dump it into the FTP, and we can do that once a year or once a week.
Very cool. Well, thank you, Michael. Any other questions out there? Chat, Q&A, raise a hand. So many options.
I'm never offended for the lack of questions, so no worries.
Jenny loved it. Very good. Thanks, Jenny. Soil-based zoning. We need more soil-based zoning. All right.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting concept for some towns, maybe not all, but it is a little different than what we're used to seeing in most places.
For sure. Okay, well, thank you, Michael.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And I'm glad that it's via webinar, because now I don't have to see people's facial reactions and expressions as I'm going through this, and they're looking at these terrible maps. And
You are way too hard on yourself.
It's much easier this way, way less pressure. So I appreciate you having me, and look forward to seeing what else you guys have come up with and can bring to the industry in assistance of what it is that we do on the planning side.
Excellent. Yeah, totally. And Michael, if you have more maps, don't hesitate to show them. We just love maps. And if it's information being shared geographically, it's a winner. So don't be so hard on yourself. That's right.
All right. Well, thanks very much.
Sure thing. Yeah, you can't see all the happy faces. Very good. All right, so our next talk is going to start at 11:15. And that is going to be, it's Alfredo's update. And Alfredo, we have you marked for 15 minutes. So is that correct?
Yeah, apparently.
You've got kind of a shorter block than others. Do you want more time? You can start now, 3 extra minutes.
I'm okay starting now if you are. I mean, I think I had a longer presentation because I thought I had longer, but I can talk quick.
Well, don't talk quick. Just let's see what else after that. 11:15, 11:30 committee updates. Most of the committees are pretty quiet. I'm okay if you go over a little bit. Yeah, let them talk, says Thad. Yes, I agree. Let them talk. All right, we're all in agreement. Alfredo, take your time.
All right.
Go ahead.
All right, sounds good. Give me a second. Let's start up the presentation. All right, let me put this into presentation mode. All right, how's that? Everybody see it full screen?
We see it full screen. Nice work.
Perfect. So I'm gonna give a kind of brief update to everything that the GIS office has been doing since the last time I spoke to you guys. Last time I spoke to you guys, I was basically just like, hi, I'm here. And so, it's one of those things that we've been, I'm gonna just going over kind of some of the things that we've been doing and making small incremental progress on. I'm still expecting to make some larger breakthroughs coming up, but we've been working towards them, so they're going to be pretty good when they happen. And I'll kind of go through a lot of this as we go along. So quick background: GIS office, legislatively created last year. Also created my position and an advisory council. Many people that are on the council are probably also on this webinar. So yeah, you guys can look at that. I can make the slides available later if you want to see any of this. That's just wall of text. Who's the GIO? That's me. I'm Alfredo Herrera. I started right at the beginning of January of this year. I've been doing this stuff professionally for at least 9 years. And I most recently was at the city of New Haven as their GIS person. The GIS office is currently only staffed by myself and David Lukens. He is the broadband mapping coordinator. So he is the one that's building the broadband maps for the state, gathering data from the ISPs, all of that kind of good stuff. I'll talk more about that a little bit later. And then we are currently hiring for a GIS analyst. So if you are interested, please apply. The position is posted now. If you need a link, I'll go find it and include it in the chat or something. And yes, so that position closes on the 7th, and then we will be selecting from the pool of candidates after that. So kind of some of the important milestones that we've hit so far. So the advisory council meeting has met once. I apologize for not having scheduled the next one and setting the cadence yet. It's just been, just trying to put out fires and figure out what's going on. I do expect that to happen soon. I'm hoping to aim for June, July if it works out with enough people not being gone. 3 out of the 4 advisory working groups that we created in the last meeting have met at least once, and we are doing things. The 4th one, and I'll talk about that briefly a little bit later, is we've been kind of doing a little bit of pre-gaming before we actually meet the group so that we know what we're actually wanting to accomplish before we, get people together. We also have launched a broadband mapping hub to kind of explain what we're doing in that arena. Eventually, that is where our access and adoption map is going to go. That's the map that is due on December 1st per the legislation. But in the intermediate time, we're going to be posting maps as soon as we complete them and we find them fit for consumption. So yeah. And then beyond that, we have gotten our initial submissions from the internet service providers after much consternation and kind of back and forth with the internet service providers on that. And we are currently in the midst of processing all of that data. So priority topics. So broadband mapping is right off the bat. Then I'll briefly talk about all of these other ones. So aerial imagery, the open data clearinghouse, or the GIS specific clearinghouse, statewide addressing and geocoding, parcel data collection standardization. So that's an update from Eric Lindquist and the CAMA group, the parcel drafting standards, and then supporting GIS stakeholders throughout the state, both in state agencies and outside. So first, broadband mapping. So we published a website, like I mentioned. It is pretty complete as far as the data that we already had available to us. So we did a lot of comparisons with FCC data and other data sources that were not necessarily directly from the ISP. So we have some of that information up. We also have potential research ideas for the academic community and just generally a lot of explaining of what we're doing and why we're doing it and why it's important. We also have the ability to, we have an application, I think it's just a survey 123 survey that if you have or know of a location that is not being served by internet, please fill out the survey. We are looking for input, and please share the survey and the site if you know of anyone that feels passionate about the state of broadband in Connecticut. So the next point is the data submissions were received somewhere between April and May. A lot of that was kind of very last minute, got a lot of crazy excuses of like dog ate my homework type stuff, but in the end we got it all. And then we are in the process of doing the initial cleaning in comparison to the address points layer, so that we can kind of figure out what's where, who's served, who's not, and who's underserved. What's still left to do? A lot of cleaning. We are looking at probably at least another month and a half of cleaning data to kind of make sure that it looks and does what we want it to do. So with the processing analyses, we are looking at underserved, unserved addresses, looking at the variance between access and adoption. So basically where the ISPs say they can service and why people are not getting said service, and kind of, you know, and then that rolls into kind of the affordability analysis that kind of goes with it. We are also looking for third-party verification. There is a survey out with CCM that is basically kind of like a state of broadband, you know, allowing people to kind of give their input to that. I will find that link eventually and forward it to people. I think it's on our, that we do have it linked on our broadband page. And then we also have the, like I said, the survey that's on the simple survey that's just like a verification on the hub page. Sorry, I can't talk today. Yeah, I mean, we were gonna have a map, but we weren't quite happy with it. So we are working on it and we are making good progress on this. We've had some good milestones and some interesting feedback from the ISPs, mostly just complaining that they didn't want to give us the data the way we asked for it, but you know, such is life. So aerial imagery, the work group is meeting monthly, I believe. If anybody is on the call and I got any of this wrong, please correct me. We are currently in the middle of doing our homework. Essentially, we are looking at current technologies. We are looking at the you know, like how, like what the sensors are like, what we can expect to kind of get for our money in the current state of the technology. We've been speaking kind of kicking the tires kind of conversations with various vendors. And we're learning lots of very interesting things. The other kind of interesting development that has happened is because this is going to be funded by ARPA funds, the contractual requirements mean that we have to basically have the contracts for both flights done by the end of 2024. So that means that the approach is probably going to be to put the RFP out for both flights with language to kind of accommodate for pricing and technology differences for the second flight, in case things, you know, either get more expensive or get less expensive. Next one is the Geospatial Open Data Clearinghouse working group. That work group is also meeting monthly, I believe. And where we are in that is we are reviewing other states' clearinghouses to kind of see, you know, kind of what's out there, what's expected, learn some lessons, what to do, what not to do, that kind of thing. We're also gathering needs on what the GIS community kind of wants for something like this. So, you know, that is something that's also going on in the discussion in the working group. Once again, if anybody has any input, please feel free to reach out to me or Emily Wilson, and we will take those comments and information into consideration. And then the last thing is we are working through some of the technological procedures and challenges. You know, some of it's just making sure like we understand how we're going to get data from other portals in through ours to kind of show it. In particular, this is stuff like DEEP and DOT, to kind of make sure that it's kind of like a no wrong door situation. So like if you find yourself at the DOT page and you end up wanting some DEEP data, you can still find a path to that without having to leave the site. Or if you come in through our portal, you can get to both of those and find all of the authoritative data and supporting metadata and all that other information through there. To answer Glenda's question, we have looked at Nearmap, but they unfortunately do not provide LiDAR. As far as I know, I will probably follow up with them, but we will be, like I said, looking into all the options as we go forward. Next one, statewide addressing. So this is the one working group that has not yet met. Mainly because Dan, Jaya, and I are still kind of trying to assess the best path forward. Right now, we're trying to, so David Lukens and I and Dan are kind of in lots of communications because David is trying to use the E911 address layer to compare the information to the ISP submissions. So we are having kind of the typical issues that you would expect from parcel derived data, where so multiple unit properties are kind of coming up a problem, and then also the fact that we're having to pull the data from the localities as opposed to having the data pushed as far as changes to the addresses, so new addresses, new developments, that and so on being developed. That has been a bit of a challenge, and we've been kind of finding issues with that. That is by no means anybody's fault. It's just kind of the way things have worked so far. So I think the approach right now is we are looking for external data to kind of give the quality of the information that we currently have a boost, to kind of make sure that we capture all of those missing pieces. So we are looking at electric utilities, other sources and things like that. We've made good progress with UI. We've also made good progress with Eversource. And we've even talked to a private data provider as well. So yeah, we're kind of working on the problem, trying to figure out where we can find some sources of good data, but then we're also working on trying to figure out, okay, how do we keep this from getting this bad again, so to speak? So we're really kind of working on figuring out the workflow that's needed to kind of maintain this and turn that pull of information for address changes into a push from the municipalities. And that's just going to take a ton of coordination, some technology, and a lot of, just talking to people. So next one is parcel data collection and analysis. So this is the CAMA working group. I asked Eric Lindquist to give me some talking points and quick information. I kind of put it all here, but the general gist is that we're up to, we had a new version of the schema for the CAMA collection this year. Worked with a lot with the CAMA vendors, so likes of Vision, QDS, etc., to create standardized reports that can just be exported. So it looks like we are expecting about 90% of all of the assessors to kind of adhere to that, and then as we kind of proceed and refine this, we're expecting that number to keep going higher. And the higher that number goes, the easier it is to kind of coalesce and clean up the parcels into something that is statewide. Let me see. Part of our hiring process is going to be the GIS analyst. So that person is going to be tasked with figuring out how to stitch together all of the parcels and the accompanying CAMA data sets. Hopefully we will be getting all of the data from the COGS in Maine in May and June. Sorry, my phone went off. And like I said, if anybody has any questions or has any comments or want any changes as we kind of move with the process, please reach out to Eric Lindquist. His information is below. And yeah, that's the CAMA update stuff. Parcel drafting standards. So this is the other work group that that was created in the work in the thing. So that one is meeting regularly. I want to say it's either monthly or bi-weekly. I forget which. I'm sure Thad can fill in that in the comments. Thank you, Thad. Monthly. So right now we're trying to figure out, like who's going to take what our approach is with kind of the report that we want to write, because really we want to write some a sort of a playbook, if you will, for the people drafting the parcels, so that we can answer the common and the not so common scenarios that happen while you're drafting parcels, like how do I handle a split, how do I handle a merge, how do I handle a property whose survey includes part of the town border, and then how to deal with it, whether the border itself was surveyed or not. And then other things like really edge cases, like, what do I do if I have a parcel that's subterranean below a right-of-way adjacent to a railroad or something really weird and specific like that. But some of these things come up, and it's good to have answers that are both platform and agnostic and platform specific, depending on the solutions that are available. So once again, work is ongoing on this one, and we're hoping to have this, and then that'll be kind of a big kind of adoption campaign beyond that, to kind of make sure that people want to use this. And I think the real benefit there is that the more people adopt this, the better that the parcels will be, the better that the administrative boundaries will be, and the just better that the general state of parcel data will be in the state. And then the last thing is supporting stakeholders. So I'm still in kind of information gathering mode. I don't think that will probably ever end. So if anybody wants to have a conversation with me about like how the state GIS office can help you, doesn't matter whether you are private industry, municipal, regional government, state government agency, doesn't matter. I want to talk to you and see what you're into and see how we can help. And I think that's all I got. So I'm, time for questions. If there is time for questions. Nope.
Oh yeah, we got time for questions. It's all right. Because in fact, you conveniently went over a lot of my own updates for the CAMA standard. So thanks a lot for the update. Very good. If you throw out an emoji, let's get an applause for Alfredo. Look at that. That's how you do it. So yeah, if you got questions for Alfredo, you can chat, you can Q&A, you can raise your hand. We'll find you. An attendee, Kristen Labrie, has a question. So they say, I'll mute you, ask to unmute.
Hey, Alfredo. I've had a couple of our clients ask if there's going to be any movement towards, you mentioned stitching the parcels together, any refinement of town boundaries as it relates to parcels, any improvement of the town boundary layer?
Yeah, so we do have a project ongoing at DOT that we are in the process of funding. We just have to get an MOU signed to kind of get the ball rolling. But they are very specifically doing an update of the deep town boundaries, very consciously saying that it is for cartographic purposes, just so that it is more kind of consistent. But we are kind of taking any data sources. So if anybody has any, once again, if anybody has any data sources that like town boundaries have been surveyed and we, Eric Glover over at DOT hasn't gotten it yet, please let me know. I will make sure it finds its way to him and we can improve that layer. So what we are looking to do is kind of take the best sources we can find as far as the quality of surveys and data, GIS data. So like someone has like town boundaries that have already been surveyed. I think Northeast Cog had them and sent them our way. So we just integrated those into our layer wholesale. The rest of it, we are doing kind of best guess stitching to kind of really solve some of the more egregious areas. And we are doing a visual a realignment of the entire coastline. If my understanding is correct, I believe Eric Glover is down to Branford, maybe Guilford at this point, starting from the New York side. So he's made a lot of progress, and it's a very daunting project. But yes, that is something that we are working on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kristen. Any other questions out there? Chat, raise a hand, Q&A. Alfredo is here. All right, the group's looking pretty quiet. Just checking the chat one more time. All right. Well, thank you, Alfredo. We appreciate your time stopping by and giving us the latest update. A lot going on over your office, and I'm sure you're looking forward to months of data cleaning ahead of you.
Oh yeah.
Rivercog has boundaries. Yeah, they do. They're awesome.
I believe we actually got those boundaries, but I will double check with Eric Glover and reach out if we haven't.
Very cool. All right. So that concludes our let's see what does it conclude? Make sure I'm talking about the right thing here. No sneaky presentations we got. That's it. Last thing we got is committee updates. I don't have any updates for the standards committee. Alfredo covered all the updates I would give. Is Eric Lindquist on in case there's opportunity?
No,
in
he
case I'm
was
missing
unable to
something?
make it today.
Okay, gotcha. Then that's it for standard updates. Eric Snowden, anything on data acquisition updates you'd like to make?
I'm looking to pass the baton to Rich Gallagher. Since I'm heading the aerial committee or work group on the council, I thought it was logical for me just to be a conduit to the network. And I'm suggesting Rich is also on that work group. I'm suggesting that he take over the aerial acquisition group at the network end of things, and we can communicate between the two if that's acceptable.
All right, Rich, what do you think about that? Live troubleshooting. Is Rich on right now?
I'll second that nomination for Rich Gallagher.
ETA on new imagery.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I was going to type it in, but now I can talk, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I've already been nominated. So who is that, Megan?
Yep. Megan.
I got you, Rich. Yeah, you know.
Somebody got me. Okay, yeah. We had talked about that earlier, so this is not a surprise.
Very good.
It seemed logical. So Eric will handle like coordination with the council, and then I can handle it on the network side.
Great. All
So
right.
one big happy family. So.
Yes, and we have a question on ETA on new imagery from Kristen Labrie.
The first flight we're planning for spring of 23, and then the second flight will be slated for spring of 26.
There you go, 3 years, 3-year increments. Okay, third flight is that oh, you're 30 in the statement for Rich Gallagher. Is that it, Jenny? Okay. She wants more flights.
Thanks, Jen.
Well, I got 6 years to figure out the third and fourth and et cetera.